Campi su pobre negro caro antiña espaini su kikota
Ja minä näin pedon nousevan merestä. Sillä oli 10 sarvea ja 7 päätä. Ja sarvissansa 10 kruunua. Ja sen päihin oli kirjoitettu pilkkaavia nimiä. Ja sille annettiin valta käydä sotaa pyhiä vastaan ja voittaa heidät. Ja sen valtaan annettiin kaikki sukukunnat ja kansat ja kielet ja kansan heimot. Marraskuun 5. päivänä vuonna 1975 yhdysvaltalainen Travis Walton ja hänen 6 työtoveriaan olivat raivaamassa metsää kaukana ihmisasutuksesta Arizonan osavaltion pohjoisosissa. Pimeys keskeytti työnteon ja edessä oli matka runsaan 60 kilometrin päässä sijaitsevaan kotikaupunkiin. Kun miehet astuivat autoonsa, he eivät osanneet aavistaa millainen ankara koettelemus heitä oli odottamassa. Edetessään pitkin kumpareista tukkitietä he havaitsivat äkkiä oudon, valoa hehkuvan esineen lähellä maankamaraa. Miehet pysäyttivät autonsa ja pohtivat kasvavan hämmennyksen vallassa, mitä oli tekeillä. Mutta Walton halusi saada paremman käsityksen asiasta. Ja niin uhmakas uteliaisuus voitti pelon.
We stopped the truck. I got out and went to get a closer look at it. When I got close to it, I was scared and went to move away from it when I was hit by a powerful bolt of energy from this craft that knocked me back through the air and knocked me unconscious. My 6 co-workers believed that I had been killed, and they took off in terror. They were very scared. They went back to Snowflake, Heber, the town nearest where this happened, and reported it to the local police. The men were very shaken, and the police took this to mean that something serious had happened. But since they did not believe in UFOs, they suspected that the men had murdered me and made up this story to cover up for what they had done.
Jollakin tuntemattomalla tavalla Walton siirrettiin avaruusalukseen.
After being struck by the beam, I regained consciousness very slowly. I was in a tremendous amount of pain, and at first I believed that I'd just been hit and taken to a hospital. But when my vision finally cleared and I could see these creatures standing over me, I became hysterical. I fought them off, and after some struggle to try to escape the craft, I was eventually forced down onto a table by some beings that looked very human. And I was rendered unconscious. I don't really know what sort of procedures were being carried out upon my body while I was unconscious. I saw some very strange effects on the ship, things, projections of stars, whether it was a map of, like a reference map of some kind, or whether it was actually in a view of where the craft was. there appeared to be stars projected around on the walls and floor of one room that I was in. When I finally got my vision clear and could see these creatures that had been standing over me, I was totally shocked because they looked like nothing I'd ever seen before. They were beings with 2 arms, 2 legs, hands, the sort of human arrangement of features. Their eyes seemed to have a power to see that was just, it just made me very, very disturbed for their gaze to be upon me. I saw these small, hairless creatures, and then a very tall, powerfully built, human-looking type, but nothing that would be a mixture of the two.
Kun Travis Waltonin tapaus tuli julkisuuteen, se joutui ennennäkemättömän mitätöintikampanjan kohteeksi. UFO-ilmiön salailun historiassa tapaus aloitti uuden vaiheen. Olihan tapauksen aitoutta puoltava todistusaineisto hyvin vahva.
When I awakened to find myself laying upon the road face down, it was the middle of the night. It was very dark. There was a light above me. I looked up to see where the light was coming from, and it went off just as I looked. But I saw a craft hovering there, very close, very low to the ground, and just as quick as I looked, it shot straight up into the air and was gone from sight in a matter of seconds. I was very terrified, very upset, just out of my mind with shock and fear. When I regained consciousness that night, I at first believed that it was the same night because I could only remember a short period of time. It was only later, after I was picked up by my family, that they told me how long I'd been gone, and that was quite a shock to me to learn I'd been gone so long. They said, "Travis, feel your face," and I reached up, and yes, I had 5-day growth of beard, so I looked at my watch. The date had changed. Then I knew what they were saying was true, and it was a terrible shock.
The Travis Walton case is probably the most persuasive case in the record that shows the reality of UFO-human interaction. I say that on the basis that 5 of his co-workers who were helping look for him during the 5 days he was gone were suspected by the police of having murdered Travis. And they submitted to a polygraph lie detector test. I talked myself with the lie detector operator, and he assured me that if there was a hoax, they were not part of it, and that they were telling the truth as they knew it. People who took Travis were not of the most highly more benevolent sort. They didn't really mistreat him much, but then they didn't show that kind of loving care that we would like to see. So his was not necessarily a very typical kind of close encounter case, but it certainly was one of the most believable.
This phenomena, I believe, has profound implications for humanity. That this is such a basic, fundamental thing about who we are, where we come from, where we're going, our place in the universe, that to leave these questions unanswered is something that we do at our own peril.
I think of it as a relationship that, for reasons that I think have to do with the perilous state of the planet, some beings, creatures, entities, whatever we want to call them, forms, have been trying to communicate with us, trying to reach us, connect with us, to evolve us and evolve themselves toward a different future. It appears that this whole phenomenon has something to do with the global ecological catastrophe that is occurring on the planet now, the collapse of living systems, the pollution of the earth, the interruption of the food chain.
Viime vuosina monet tutkijat ovat vakuuttuneet siitä, että huoli maapallon tilasta on yksi sieppausten taustatekijöitä. Tässä valossa UFO-salailu vaikuttaa kuin itsetuhoon yllyttämiseltä. Onko maapallolla vaikutusvaltaisia tahoja, joiden tavoitteita kriisien kärjistyminen edistää? Ohjaako salainen maailmanhallitus tätä kehitystä? Ihminen haluaa kiihkeästi löytää elämää muilta taivaankappaleilta, mutta kieltää ehdottomasti mahdollisuuden, että ulkopuolinen elämä olisi vieraillut meidän planeetallamme, kenties jo satoja miljoonia vuosia sitten. Viestiikö kaipuu tähtiin sitä, että ihminen solumuistinsa tasolla tietää olevansa tähdistä kotoisin? Ja kun suurvallat ovat innolla valloittamassa lähiavaruutta, onko mukana muitakin tavoitteita kuin julkisesti kerrotaan? Ne tarkkailijat, jotka puhuvat salaisesta maailmanjärjestyksestä, uskovat, että yksi kuuohjelman todellisia päämääriä on elintilan etsiminen jollekin tarkoin seulotulle ihmisryhmälle. Virallisesti kuu kiinnostaa päättäjiä, koska sitä pidetään soveliaana väliasemana matkalla muille aurinkokunnan planeetoille. Varsinkin Mars-planeetta on aina kiehtonut ihmistä, ja hiljattain se on noussut uudelleen huomion kohteeksi, kun tiedemiehet ovat löytäneet viitteitä muinaisesta elämästä sen pinnalla. Vielä enemmän mielikuvitusta ovat kiihottaneet sen pinnalla näkyvät rakennelmat, joita monet pitävät viesteinä ammoin sammuneilta sivilisaatiolta. Mutta myös kuu tarjoaa monia arvoituksia.
La NASA a des photos de la face cachée de la Lune, où on voit une grande activité d'humanoïdes. Le trafic il est tellement dense qu'on dirait carrément les Champs-Élysées en heure de pointe. Il paraît même qu'il y a des échanges entre les extraterrestres et les humains.
Mitä kuussa oikein on tekeillä? Näitä kuuluotainten välittämiä hätkähdyttäviä kuvia on vain harvoin aiemmin esitetty yleisölle. Tähtitieteilijät ovat kuitenkin jo lähes 200 vuoden ajan tehneet tuhansia havaintoja kuussa näkyvistä, liikkuvista tai sykkivistä valoista. Virallisen selityksen mukaan kyseessä ovat milloin jääkiteet, milloin optiset harhat, mutta monet astronauttien salaisiksi tarkoitetut keskustelut ovat vahvasti selitystä vastaan. Kysymys on todennäköisesti mitä suurimman luokan salailusta, ja kontaktihenkilöiden mukaan siihen ovat osallisina niin sotilaspiirit kuin vieraat sivilisaatiotkin.
The military bases on the moon, I've been told by the Andromedans, are United States, Soviet, English, as well as French personnel. I'm told that there is a working population of 35,000. They have selectively chosen the people that they want there. Now, these bases are also, if you would consider New World Order bases, they originally started to go up there to create a whole new world. But unfortunately, this hasn't exactly worked the way they want it because they really don't have anywhere else to go. So now they're sort of stuck on the moon. However, they are helping to create many of the cataclysms that are going on here in the Earth, such as being able to control weather from the moon. The Andromedans say that their science tells them that there are 100 trillion galaxies in the known universe, and that in every one of those galaxies there is life. And human life, as we know ourselves, is flourishing everywhere. There are life forms beyond our present conception or imagination. In our galaxy, life flourishes everywhere. In the Andromedan constellation, there are at least 28 different races that are both human and not human. But the intent between these different groups is what we really need to focus on, because there are many of the groups whose intent is the evolvement of all life, equally and unconditionally. And then there are other groups whose intention is to control all life, conditionally.
People from another planet in our own solar system came here about 450,000 years ago. They came for their own reasons, their own purposes, but at some point they gave us civilization and brought about us Homo sapiens and brought us to the stage where we are at today. They were coming and going because their planet comes to our vicinity every 3,600 years. And that is when things happen on Earth and to us, to mankind. They came here in search of gold, in order to have gold particles with which to protect their own atmosphere and thus survive on their planet. And in the course of that, and the text, the Sumerian texts are very clear and very detailed on that. In the course of that, the few of them who were here said, we cannot continue like that anymore. We are astronauts, we are not miners. And about 300,000 years ago, there was a mutiny. The text dealing with that, known to scholars as the story of Atrahasis, is very well known. So I'm not inventing anything. I'm just reporting to the public today what was known and recorded in antiquity, but which today only a few scholars keep the information to themselves, and I'm making it public.
Hiljattain amerikkalaiset kromosomitutkijat ovat löytäneet todisteita, joiden mukaan koko ihmisrotu periytyy yhdestä ainoasta geeniperheestä kaukaa esihistoriallisilta ajoilta. Sitchinin mukaan tämä sama tieto löytyy myös sumerilaisista nuolenpääkirjoituksista. Niistä käy ilmi, että suurikokoinen taivaan kappale, jonka tekstit tuntevat nimellä Nibiru, tulee suunnilleen 3600 vuoden välein lähelle maapalloa. Kapinaan johtaneen selkkauksen Nibirulta tulleet kullanetsijät ratkaisivat luomalla alkukantaisesta maan ihmisestä eräänlaisen orjarodun raatamaan kultakaivoksissa puolestaan. Sumerilaislähteet kertovat varsin yksityiskohtaisesti, miten se tapahtui.
And then the text described a process of genetic engineering, of combining the genes of those visitors to Earth from their planet with the egg of what we would call scientifically a female Homo erectus about 300,000 years ago, bringing us Homo sapiens about. And as you and your listeners, I'm sure, know, modern science has confirmed only in the last year or two that indeed there was an Eve and indeed there was an Adam about 270,000 years ago. So the story of Adam and Eve is the story not of creation of us from nothing. It is a story of evolution, gradual, and then somebody coming and through advanced technology of genetic engineering, jumping the gun, making evolution faster and bringing us about. So the biblical tale of Adam and Eve and the Sumerian writings explain what really happened.
Monet kontaktihenkilöt väittävät saaneensa tietoa ihmisen kosmisesta alkuperästä muun muassa seulasista ja härän tähdistöstä tulevilta olennoilta. Tricia McCannon on saanut lisävalaistusta omiin kokemuksiinsa hypnoosissa. Vaikka regressiota pidetään epävarmana menetelmänä, se on tutkijoiden mukaan kuitenkin ihmisen päivämuistia luotettavampi. Pyramiditutkimus viittaa vahvasti siihen, että avaruusvierailijat ovat todella jättäneet jälkensä maapallon kulttuureihin.
I found myself in my first regression, I found myself at the age of 8 years old on board a Pleiadian spacecraft, and above me was like a clear bubble, and through it you could see blue sky and white clouds, and there was a human-looking man who seemed tall to me in a jumpsuit, and he pointed up at the sky and he said, "You know how it is when you look into the skies at night and you see the stars? Well, we come from a planet around one of those stars." So I asked him telepathically, and his communication with me was all telepathic. "Well, you know, have you been here before?" And he said, "We have come to your planet many times throughout the centuries." And I asked, "Like when?" And he didn't physically touch me then, but it was as if he psychically touched me right here on my third eye. And I found myself going back in time. And in the regression, I began to speak with a deeper, more masculine voice. And I found that I was a very tall, human-looking man. I'd say probably about 9 feet tall, and I was in Egypt. And I was involved in burying a spaceship between the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid underground. And there were a lot of other things that we buried there, what looked to me to be something like mylar, unusual writing. There were these discs that if you took them and you spun them, they set up like a holographic picture that played out for about 20 minutes. I couldn't hear any sound, so I don't know if they had any audio, but they definitely had a 3-dimensional holographic picture that continued for about 20 minutes. So there was a lot of information stored on these discs.
In 1977, my colleagues and I were able to uncover underneath one of the pyramid cavities actual forms of synthesized glass crystal that gave off a very strong gamma ray radiation. This is very important because if this crystal still has a high radiation level, it means that the Egyptians, or perhaps those who came before the Egyptians, were able to capture momentarily some of this unique energy radiation. It may also be a scientific explanation of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah when fire fell from space upon the cities of the ancient Near East.
Lähi-idän vanhojen kulttuurien tuntijat ovat todenneet monet vanhan testamentin kertomukset lainoiksi aikaisemmilta kulttuureilta. Kristillinen kirkko on kuitenkin ummistanut silmänsä sen viittauksilta maan ulkopuoliseen vaikutukseen. Mutta pitäisikö esimerkiksi Raamatun kielikuvat uudesta maasta ja uudesta taivaasta ottaa sittenkin hyvin kirjaimellisesti?
This three-sided pyramid sitting on a triangular base is an ancient symbol in geometry called the tetrahedron. This tetrahedron is the basis of the geometry that's encoded upon the planet Mars. Tetrahedral geometry, raised to the fourth dimension, is encoded within a gigantic five-sided pyramid, photographed by the Viking lander program in 1976. This gigantic five-sided pyramid points to a gigantic face, a mile in diameter and over a mile in height, in length, and hundreds of feet high. It's the size of a mountain and was probably carved from a mountain. The significance of this fourth dimensional geometry on Mars is that the same geometry appears in the Pyramid of Giza. The same mathematics are encoded there. And by manipulating one's consciousness through knowledge of the geometry of the ancient pyramids, one can shift one's personal consciousness, have an out-of-body experience, an illuminative experience, what is sometimes called a near-death experience. But no trauma need be involved, simply a thought process. I think that one day all beings on Earth will have an understanding of higher dimensional geometry and the geometry of consciousness. And as citizens of all countries around the world learn this geometry and learn how to use it, they will elevate their consciousness, become attuned to the higher consciousness of extraterrestrial visitors.
Käsitys UFO-ilmiön luonteesta on vähitellen muuttunut siten, että avaruusolentojen ja ihmisten kohtaamisessa katsotaan perimmältään olevan kysymys vuorovaikutuksesta jossakin hyvin syvällisessä merkityksessä. Monien kontaktihenkilöiden mukaan siepatut tulisi nähdä ensisijassa uuden kulttuurin soihdunkantajiksi. Ilmeisesti vieraat sivilisaatiot ovat täällä toimijakseen eräänlaisina valvojina. Näyttäähän ihminen kovin huonosti pystyvän itse ohjaamaan elämäänsä. Syvä horros jähmettää hänen luovuuttaan ja lamauttava pelko ohjaa hänen askeliaan. Niinpä hän sallii julkisten ja salaisten vaikuttajien päättävän elämänsä sisällöstä. Ihminen on myynyt vapautensa ja pannut otsalleen pedon merkin. Koko sivilisaatiotamme leimaa syvä hajaannus, ja aineellisen perustan vahvistuessa se vain syvenee. Deborah Rossille avaruusolennot ovatkin tähdentäneet, että maapallon pelastamiseksi meidän olisi kyettävä toimimaan maailman yhteisönä. Elämän yhteisyys ja pelon turhuus kirkastuivat hänelle epätavanomaisen kokemuksen kautta, jossa avaruusolennot opastivat häntä holografisten symbolien välityksellä.
And they slowed down one symbol, the triangle with the circle through it, And I flew through that, and it was like I could see the history of Earth and the future Earth. And they said, what is your worst fear? And I said, of course, dying. It's usually the first thing we all say. And they said, really, you should have no fears. Everything is connected in one. So they said, would you like to know how the dying process feels? And I said, sure, you know, I mean, I want to conquer my fear. And when I went through this dying process, it was a very interesting process. I felt a warming sensation, much like a star heating up, or a light bulb just before it goes out, it gets brightest before the transformation. And it was in about 3 stages. I went through the death sequence, and I became the light. And they showed me that on the other side, there is still consciousness. Consciousness never leaves. And I felt really good about myself. I had conquered my fears, and that made the biggest change in my life. I was able to do things I couldn't do before, compose music, do artwork, without judging myself first. The next morning I woke up and I was going to make breakfast, and of course I didn't want to tell my children what had happened because it's hard enough being in this reality. I didn't want to create some other reality for them and I wasn't quite sure what I had experienced at this time. And when I went into their rooms, they were drawing pictures of aliens and spacecrafts, and I asked, what are these? And they said, well, we had visitors last night, Mommy, and I couldn't believe it.
Many people that I work with will describe experiences in which the body seems to stay wherever they have been, and it is only the consciousness that leaves the room and travels outside or up into space. This is what might be called out-of-body experiences. The same person can have, on certain occasions, what might be called an out-of-the-house experience, and other times just out-of-body experiences. And so I believe, yes, that does happen.
Me and my brother shared a room, and we had a bunk bed. That night, I was asleep on the top bunk, and I woke up in the middle of the night. I looked down at my brother's bed to find that he was not there, and there seemed to be kind of a blue haze through the room. And I wasn't scared that my brother was gone. I felt fine with it, and through the hallway came a very tall, praying mantis-like alien, and he came up to me and he didn't say nothing, but I got this feeling of protection, and everything was all right. And then I seen my mother being taken down the hallway, not walking, she was levitating, and there was an alien in front of her and behind her.
I was hearing like action happening in one room, and I looked in there and I seen about 4 or 5 little ones working on another one on like a table. One of the ETs, I guess, was hurt. And I asked what happened to him, and he said one of their ships malfunctioned, and he was in the ship when it malfunctioned. It crashed. She showed me a room, a circular room with a bunch of baby incubators, but there weren't babies in them. They were just little hybrid fetuses. More than 500. Just all around in a circle, one after another.
I have a small scoop mark on the inside roof of my mouth. Other people have found these scoop marks on their arms and in other places of their body. It's common on the inside of the mouth. I believe, my personal opinion, is that they're taking the scoop of skin for some type of DNA testing or something like that.
Tutkijoiden mukaan sieppauskokemuksen luonne on muuttumassa. Risteytyskokeilut ovat väistymässä ja tilalle on tullut yhä selvemmin ihmisen kosminen herättäminen.
2 recently discovered developments within the various patterns we associate with UFO abductions. The first of them has to do with what I call co-option, as if the UFO occupants are able to psychologically take over various abductees and turn them into, in a certain sense, allies aboard the ship. A second new development, or new to me, which is very different and very interesting, has to do with the fact that I've now run into about 12 cases where normal humans will meet in the real world and look at one another and realize they know one another. What emerges when they look into these experiences a little further, and this often comes just through normal recollection, is they remember having been inside a UFO with that person. That the UFO occupants will pick up, let's say, a little boy in one city and a little girl in another, and in a couple of cases I have, in one case at least, the little girl is from England and the little boy is from the United States. They're abducted, and presumably the normal kinds of abduction procedures take place, the physical examination, the sperm and ova sampling, and so forth. But these two are brought together and left in a kind of neutral environment inside the ship. And in a certain sense, it's as if the UFO occupants are observing the way we human beings form friendships, romantic attachments, even sexual attachments, and so forth. Very often as children, they remember this as if they had an imaginary friend who's aging along with them. They often form great emotional attachments to these people. And when they meet in the real world, the effect is powerful. And in one case I've worked with, the man and woman met, and they realized that they had been in love with one another, and each one at this point is married to someone else. So they're suffering through this kind of an issue. So here we have two new facets to the UFO abduction phenomenon, as if they are some kind of strange anthropologists in the sky who were interested in the way human beings get together.
I think this abduction matter is a very important story, in that it seems, whatever people's point of view is about what's going on, it's clear that we are in some kind of relationship with another intelligence. And if even that fact could be accepted and openly discussed and studied, this could be a very healthy matter, bring us out of our insularity and arrogance and egoism, to open up to the fact that there is another reality, there is another intelligence that is reaching us. And it's important to acknowledge that and move on from there. It's a great opportunity for us.
Kun yhdysvaltalainen tohtori Richard Boylan alkoi työskennellä sieppausilmiön kokeneiden ihmisten auttamiseksi, hän joutui ankaran boikotointi- ja mustamaalauskampanjan kohteeksi. Saman kohtalon ovat kokeneet monet muut tutkijat ja terapeutit, jotka ovat liian näkyvästi paneutuneet tähän kipeään asiaan. Ja silmiinpistävän usein taustalta löytyvät hallitusta lähellä olevat tahot. Boylanin vainoaminen ilmeni räikeimmin 3 tapauksessa. Ensimmäisessä niistä ammattikollegio otti hänet kuulusteltavakseen peruuttaakseen hänen psykologin toimilupansa. Käsittelyn alettua Kalifornian osavaltion yleinen syyttäjä pyysi kollegiota pitämään häntä jatkuvasti ajan tasalla kuulustelujen sujumisesta, mikä on ennenkuulumaton vaatimus niin mitättömän asian ollessa kyseessä. Toisessa tapauksessa Boylania aiottiin haastatella eräässä radio-ohjelmassa, mutta juuri ennen haastattelua liittovaltion kuluttaja-asiain johtaja otti yhteyttä toimittajaan ja kertoi, että Boylan oli vaarallinen henkilö ja että hänelle ei tulisi antaa suunvuoroa.
The third instance of the persecution by governmental forces is that the board, after they took my license away and heard that I was going to be on the Sightings television program, a nationally famous program about UFO experiences, sent them a libelous and defamatory series of papers with distorted content from the hearing, trying to picture me as some kind of terrible person so that the Sightings program would throw away the film they had made of me and my work with some other experiences and not show it. To their credit, the television station eventually showed the program. This harassment has resulted in the loss of my license, and I'm now fighting that in the courts with my attorney on an appeal, and hope to get my license back and to be resumed serving people as a counseling psychologist. But it is clear that this is the price I must pay at this time, and that the cover-up people will stop at nothing in order to maintain the cover-up and the posture that anybody who takes this seriously must be mentally ill, which is one of the things they said during my hearing. What is interesting is that the cover-up will not be the end of the saga, because the cover-up forces want, if they can't convince the people that UFOs are not here, to then convince them that the extraterrestrials are evil and that they should be authorized to use Star Wars weapons to shoot them down. While the people who understand properly the extraterrestrial visitation believe that our proper posture is to meet them in peaceful ways and look for a respectful cultural exchange between visiting civilizations from other star systems and the civilization of Earth.
At Pit. Jean-Jacques Annaudin elokuvassa. Kertomus miehestä, joka rikkoi rajansa ja löysi itsensä maailman huipulla. 7 vuotta Tiibetissä.
In the New Mexico desert. This started the cover-up of the century. Listening to Robert Morningsky, a Native American, we can see how we can communicate with the aliens. Some claim that President Eisenhower was the last one who was allowed to meet with the aliens. Allowed by whom, by the way? This meeting supposedly took place at Lake Marok in 1953. Why this cover-up? Why is this in itself encouraging and hope-inspiring event kept a secret from us?
In 1947, 6 young Native American men were on a vision quest up in the Four Corners area. These 6 young men witnessed the fall and crash of a bright light. Deciding to find out what had happened, they went into the hills and actually discovered the crash site before the soldiers had arrived. The Indians for a long time have known that when a light falls from the sky, that you do not go. The soldiers appear and they take everything away, and they take anyone who is there with them. These 6 young men decided, however, to go to the crash site, and they did manage to get there before the soldiers and began to search through the rubble. While they were searching, they discovered there was an extraterrestrial who was still alive. There were some bodies, but this one being, though injured, seemed to need help. Rather than leave him behind to the soldiers, these 6 young men took the being with them to their camp. They were very familiar with the politics, with the ways of all people, and they wanted to help. In time, they were able to nurse this being back to his health and gain his trust. They learned from this being the history, the hidden history of planet Earth. The story that the being told reveals that man has been manipulated, he has been used, he has been deceived. Those beings that man has called gods, the beings that he has called devils, are in fact extraterrestrials. Man was created by extraterrestrials, guided by extraterrestrials, manipulated, used, and punished by extraterrestrials. The message of this being was that man is not in control of his own destiny. The churches, the religions, the different philosophies which teach us to turn the other cheek, which teaches to submit to some heavenly power or to submit to some earthly power. The purpose of all of these institutions is to deny man true free will.
Esi-isiltään periytyvien ennustusten perusteella intiaanit kertovat, että vanhan maailman loppulaskenta alkoi samanaikaisesti ensimmäisen avaruussukkulan noustessa ilmaan. Vaikka sadat todistajalausunnot ovat 50 vuoden aikana puhkoneet Roswellin tapauksen ylle lasketun salailun verhon, tapaus on edelleenkin mysteeri, ja sitä koskevat käsitykset ovat yhä yllättävän ristiriitaisia. Ihmisen ja avaruuden salaisuudet odottavat vielä ratkeamistaan.
It is my hope that people across the globe will look into themselves, will stop looking for answers out in space, out in heaven, or in some other being, but try to find the answer within themselves.
Roswell case was, as far as Roswell is concerned, Roswell was a real alien orchestrated event. It was really alien orchestrated. But the way it happened was very different than what people are led to believe. The Santilli film, the aliens that one sees in the Santilli film and the autopsy film, those are complete fabrications. That is an attempt by a modern-day group of people to exploit the UFO market. They're fake. But that does not negate the importance of what happened at Roswell. There were bodies. People picked bodies up. People touched debris on the ground. But about 48 hours after that event happened, there were no bodies. There were no pieces. There were no debris. The people that participated in the event did not know what happened to the debris. They became confused. One person would say, well, didn't you take the bodies and put them on a truck? Well, I thought I did, but I don't know where they are now. It was a very confusing issue. They had memories of the event, but there were no pieces and no evidence. The reason that is because these races that are 100 million years ahead of us went back in time and changed the event. They prevented the crash from happening. So there are two Roswell events because there are two parallel time tracks there. Mind is outside of space and time. So the memory of this event that was erased is still present in the memories of the participants. But the actual physicality of the event is missing because the event was cut out of time. The extraterrestrials went back in time and prevented the crash from happening. There is no such thing as alien bodies in storage anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the world. It did not happen. It never happened. There were alien bodies on the ground for about 48 hours at most, but that is all. Then they disappeared. They disappeared because time changed. The event was erased.
We have more little bodies in refrigeration and under ice than we have room to keep. We have numbers of UFOs. We have some that didn't even crash. We have retrieved alien UFOs that are in pristine first-class condition. When I was assigned to shape headquarters in Paris from 1963 to 1967, a 30-meter disc crashed in northern Germany in the early months of 1964. This 30-meter metallic disc crashed in northern Germany near the Baltic Sea, near a little town known as Timmensdorfer. A British Army engineer battalion retrieved that object. Got inside of the disc, they found 12 small bodies. I've seen the autopsy photographs. I've seen the photographs of the retrieval. I've seen the photos of them taking the object apart, carrying it away on large lowboy transportation. I've seen the details, close-up photographs of the autopsies. I've read the detailed autopsy remarks and commentary by the British medical examiners as they dissected these little bodies. I've seen this firsthand. It was a shock, first time I was ever exposed to it.
Well, these are the three pictures that are causing a very great controversy among the ufologic community. As you can see, this picture shows a great type of alien the great type of alien, the classic great type of alien, supposedly dead in the Roswell crash in 1947. As you can see, the three pictures shown an entity that has some particularities, like 4 fingers in every hand and 4 toes, 4 fingers in the foot. And of course, the color of the skin is very pallid, very pale, very gray. And he has a very big stroke on the head, a big head, as you can see. Supposedly, according to the rumors, it was dead by the militaries during the recovery operation. I don't see the similarities between this photograph of this being and the one of the movie Roswell. The other theory that is is established is that this is a dummy that belongs to the museum that is in the Roswell city, a dummy that is in the UFO museum. But I told you, as I told you, the differences are very, very big. I don't think that these versions are going to be strong. So we have to wait to really establish if these are the first authentic photographs of the great alien killed in the Roswell crash in 1947, according to the witnesses that all along 550 years almost have established this kind of description of the aliens that crashed in Roswell in 1947.
My military team, beginning in 1984, the psychic team, began to apply our military intelligence collection techniques, our remote viewing techniques, against UFO phenomena. We have data banks that are very extensive. But only now is a picture beginning to emerge about what the intent is of several different races. And there is not just one group of ETs. There appear to be at least 2, possibly 3, that we've identified. We think that their intent is totally benign, that they are attempting to save us from ourselves using some very esoteric techniques. We believe that one of these races is at least 100 million years in advance of us, not 1 million, not 100,000, but 100 million. So it's very difficult for us to comprehend intents of a race that is so far in advance of us and so very different. We're trying our best to do that. But from what we've seen in terms of their operations, where they go, what they do, it does appear to be of benefit to mankind.
Monet tarkkailijat uskovat, että UFO-ilmiöön kohdistuva salailu tulee pian murtumaan. Etenkin kun Robert Deanin ja Ed Damesin kaltaiset korkean turvaluokituksen omaavat sotilaat ovat alkaneet avoimesti kertoa havainnoistaan ja kokemuksistaan, asettaen samalla uransa, maineensa ja vapautensa vaakalaudalle. Kun Dean sai vuonna 1963 komennuksen Naton Euroopan päämajaan, hän huomasi pian, miten lähelle 3. maailmansotaa mantereen yllä havaitut ufot maailman ajoivat. Ufon saapuessa idästä Natossa uskottiin, että kyseessä oli jokin Itä-Euroopassa kehitetty uusi huipputekninen ilma-alus. Myöhemmin on käynyt ilmi, että lännestä ilmaantuvat ufot aiheuttivat Varsovan liiton piirissä saman huolen. Ed Dames suhtautuu salailuväitteisiin varsin varauksellisesti, mikä saattaa johtua siitä, että hänen ryhmänsä työskentelee edelleen Yhdysvaltain armeijan laskuun. Väitetään, että se, kuten muutkin läntiset sotilasmahdit, on turhaan yrittänyt soveltaa omiin tarkoituksiinsa avaruuden sivilisaatioilta peräisin olevaa teknologiaa. Yhden teorian mukaan epäonnistuminen on johtunut siitä, että kyseisen teknologian käyttö edellyttää tietynlaista mielen kykyihin perustuvaa kontrollia, jota sotilaspiirit eivät vielä hallitse. Kuumeiset tutkimukset kaukokatsonnan ja muiden paranormaalien menetelmien parissa ovat kuitenkin jo tuottaneet tuloksia muilla aloilla.
And in that contract, my remote viewers discovered that the ozone problem would not be fixed. Mankind would not fix the ozone problem, and that it would result in massive despeciation of the planet. Many species would die off, many humans would die off. Humans would be forced to build habitats and self-enclosed structures These habitats would first be used to raise food crops because vicissitudes of weather changes would prohibit the growth of crops, food crops, in a normal way. These very large habitats would form the templates for cities, for structures. Humans would begin to move to migrate into these habitats and live there as the atmosphere around them fails. So all in all, it was a very grim picture. The areas outside of the habitats were barren and sterile. There was one interesting and I would say positive note. In about an era where my grandchildren would grow up, my children's children, they would grow up alongside of hybrids, hybrid species. We do not know where these hybrids come from. We're not sure how they arrived, but we did see them present with humans, side by side with humans, in an era that I would call my grandchildren's age. So we're investigating where these hybrids come from to learn more about them, but they are part human, and we don't know what the other part is.
One of the things that I've been trying so desperately to do for the last few years is to force my government to tell its people what it knows about this matter. I learned very early that the UFOs were serious. I learned that the NATO study concluded that they represented several high-technology extraterrestrial civilizations. I also learned that this study, this survey, this program that they were conducting at on the planet here had been going on for a very long time, hundreds if not thousands of years. The military study in '64 also concluded that apparently there did not seem to be a military threat involved. The repeatedly demonstrated technology of these objects and those who were flying them was so far beyond, in technology, anything we had at the time, that if they had been malevolent or hostile, they would have taken the planet, they would have taken the real estate, they would have taken over a very long time ago.
There is a higher intelligence in the galaxy. He's trying to warn us and is worried about us. Is it merely predicting the future, or is it actively, through catastrophes, trying to force us to change our ways? In either case, our self-appointed authorities will have to stop this massive cover-up and let us know. This evening we learned how extraterrestrials exist among us and in some cases even control our lives. Next time we will demonstrate a grim and devastating scenario. The new apocalypse and how we rise to a new order. On behalf of Juhan of Grann and the production staff, this is Dave Lipkin saying good night. Don't miss our next episode. See you soon.
Vapautta syövä ja vallasta elävä peto hallitsee kansoja ja kansanheimoja. Ja sen kuvaa kumartava ihminen on osoittautunut pelkäksi viheliäiseksi loiseksi. Yhä useammat niistä, joita meidän tulisi kuunnella, sanovat ihmisen sysänneen liikkeelle ekologisen täystuhon, jota ei voida enää pysäyttää. Miten käy ihmisen? Kiroaako kaikkeuden läpäisevä suuri äly jälleen hänen takiaan kaiken lihan, jossa on elämän henki? Onko edessä suuri erottelu, jossa yksi korjataan talteen ja toinen jätetään?